All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Morgan Crossman. I'm the Executive Director of Building Bright Futures, and we're excited to have you all at our March State Advisory Council meeting on a very snowy, very sunny Monday. We are excited to have some new members being nominated for our State Advisory Council today, and we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the broader role of the SAC, but also points of leverage for how we can think about creating change as a board, and also talk a little bit about, the topics and things that the board should really be grappling with as we move forward with this next year. We have a really exciting presentation of the successes from year one from the Vermont Integration Project, Birth to Five. Other people know this grant as the Preschool Development Grant. So we'll have two of our key leaders in that space giving an overview of that body of work. And we're going to hold some space at the end of the meeting to hear from State Advisory Council members, but also to offer an opportunity for our members of the public to share via a public forum and really give you the space to talk about any kind of emerging policy priorities or things that you want to elevate to the State Advisory Council that are impacting children and families. Recognizing the way that a public forum and a public comment period generally runs, it won't be time for full discussion, but we definitely want to allow time for folks to be elevating key issues that you're seeing on behalf of kids, families, and the system. For all of you who are joining us by Zoom today that are not members of the State Advisory Council, we would love to invite you to share your name and your organization or how you are showing up or where you are showing up from today across the state of Vermont. And then for State Advisory Council members, please keep your cameras on so that we can have an opportunity for you to meet and see each other. And those of you who are not a part of the formal State Advisory Council, we'd like you to keep your videos off until that public comment period later at the end of the meeting. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Beth Trzanski, our Deputy Director, to do our mindful moment.
Thanks, Morgan. For our mindful moment this morning, just some mindful breathing for this afternoon. So if you're welcome to leave your screens on or turn them off. And you're going to inhale on 3 counts and exhale on 4 counts. So inhale, 1, 2, 3, and exhale for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll let you do that 2 more times on your own count. Thank you. Welcome back. So welcome to the State Advisory Council. We have a range of things going on today. So I'm going to hand this to Flor to run us through our roll call.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. My name is Flor Diaz-Smith, and I serve on behalf of the Vermont School Boards Association, and I'm the private co-chair of the State Advisory Council. We're going to invite State Advisory Council members to introduce themselves via roll call. We will start with our public partners. My co-chair, Elisa Stelberg.
Hi, Flor. Hi, everyone. I'm Elisa Stolberg. I'm the Director for Family and Child Health at the Health Department.
Meg from the Agency of Education. And sometimes Tammy is here, so I don't know who is here. Could you introduce yourself? I'm not seeing anybody. Janet.
Hi there, Janet McLaughlin, Deputy Commissioner, Child Development Division, DCF.
Renee Kelly, you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. Renee Kelly, Vermont Head Start Collaboration Office.
Susanna Davis. I don't see Susanna. Representative Jessica Brumstead, are you here? Okay. Oh, I see that she was absent. Sorry, I missed that one. She did update it on that one. And now our private at large members, Eddie Gale, sir.
Hi, Eddie Gale with the A.D. Henderson Foundation.
Thanks, Eddie. Carol Lang,
Good
voting.
afternoon, everyone. Carol Lang-Godden with the Vermont Parent-Child Center Network and Lamoille Family Center.
Sharon Harrington. I don't see Sharon. Dimitri, do you want to introduce yourself? I see you.
Hi, everyone. Dimitri Garter. I'm the business rep on the State Advisory Council.
Christy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Christy Swenson, and I'm with the Vermont Head Start Association and Capstone Head Start.
Oh, sorry, Lexi. I don't see Lexi. Okay, Libby.
Hi, everyone. I'm Libby Dalian, and I'm a parent representative.
And Mike Wright, are you here? Mike, I hope you are. I don't see Mike. Okay. I'm going to move to our two non-voting members. Akira, I thought I saw you. Oh, Susanna, you're here now. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Susanna Davis, Racial Equity Director for the state.
Kendall Smith. I don't see Kendall Smith. He's supposed to be joining us, but I see now that he's absent from the governor's office. And I also want to note that a few members of the council sent their regrets. Becca Webb, Paul Dragon, Jessica Bentier, Agency of Commerce and Communication Development, Cheryl Wilcox, Department of Mental Health, who was kind enough to run the meeting last time for us when a lot of us couldn't be here, Shayla Livingston from the Agency of Human Services, and Senator Ruth Hardy is also not able to join us today. Okay, so now we're going to move into our minutes. Could I have a motion to approve our minutes of February 2024?
This is Christy. I'll motion.
All right, thank you, Christy. A second?
I'll second. It's Carol.
Thank you, Carol. Any discussion? They were part of the packet. All right, no discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Or raising your hand. Thanks. Any opposed? Any abstain? Seeing none, the minutes have passed. Okay, I'm going to give it back to Morgan.
I just want to quickly document, I think I saw Renee and Dimitri abstain.
Yeah, I didn't get the packet. I apologize. So I'm a day late and $1 short. So
okay, thanks.
Much appreciated. Trying to navigate but the minutes are still passing. We definitely
yeah, and they were taking note there. All right.
Thank you.
Morgan, back to you.
All right. Well, we do have a smaller state advisory council today. I think that a lot of people are traveling and at conferences and on vacation with family. And a couple of folks are actively texting saying they are virtually on their way. So part of today's session is talking about the Vermont Integration Project, VIP B5, which again, folks have called a range of different things, but it is one of the federal grants that we in Vermont have a long-standing history of competing successfully for as we think about the landscape of early childhood grants that build the foundation and the capacity of Vermont's early childhood system. So the newest iteration of the preschool development grant, we had titled the Vermont Integration Project, Building Integration in Vermont's Birth to 5 Early Childhood Systems, or we call it VIP B5. But I think if you hear people saying PDG or the Preschool Development Grant or VIP B5, all of those are the grant funding that were awarded to us in the last year to support the foundation of the early childhood system. And one of the other points before I hand it off to colleagues who are going to be presenting this work is that even though it's called the Birth to 5 grant, one of the really exciting opportunities as part of this grant funding that Vermont took advantage of within the application is to expand beyond 5 and really talk about the early childhood system more broadly through age 8. one of the reasons we feel like Vermont was so successful in this application is that it was such a collaborative effort alongside so many different agencies, but also the private and community-based partners to develop a strong grant application. So even though this grant was awarded to the Child Development Division in the Agency of Human Services, it's co-led by 5 different entities, including Building Bright Futures, the Division of Family and Child Health, the Agency of Education, and the Department of Mental Health. And it really serves as one of many funding streams that we have to support a strong early childhood system in Vermont. And the focus of writing that grant was saying, how do we strengthen and then build on the existing systems, the priorities that have been set through the Vermont Early Childhood Action Plan, and Vermont's strong infrastructure in place to understand continuously what the needs of kids and families are. So actually writing that proposal, we did a big survey out to the field and used one of our state advisory council meetings to say to partners, what are the longstanding chronic issues and priorities, and what are the emerging priorities, and how could we address them as we are writing this grant? So really, really proud of the strong process that led to the current iteration of our VIP B5 grant. And as we wrap up this first year of funding, we're excited to have Lisa Maines, who is the grant manager, and Dr. Valerie Wood, who's the Early Childhood Systems Evaluator, come to the State Advisory Council and talk about year 1 successes and some of the impacts as we head into year 2. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Valerie Wood and Lisa Maines.
Great. Thank you, Morgan, for that introduction. So yes, I'm Valerie Wood. I am the new Early Childhood Systems Evaluator at Building Bright Futures, and so excited to be here with you all today, along with my co-presenter, Lisa Maines from the Child Development Division. And yes, we're going to be talking about the Vermont Integration Project Building Integration in Vermont's Birth to 5 Early Childhood System. Next slide, please. So before we talk a little bit about the grant, because Lisa and I are both new to our roles, we want to take this opportunity just to share a little bit about ourselves, our background, and the lens through which we're viewing this work. So for myself, I'm relatively new to Building Bright Futures, started back in June of last year, and my position at Building Bright Futures is also new. So building capacity in Vermont's early childhood system in 2 really exciting ways, just both with the creation of the position and then the particular academic expertise and experience that I bring. My formal academic training is in a field known as applied social psychology, and it included a training in a variety of quantitative and qualitative research and evaluation methods. And then that's joined with the work experience that I got when I moved to Vermont. So I started out in Vermont working in state government in 2 different positions that were focused on data and evaluation. And then most recently was at the University of Vermont as a faculty member at the Center on Disability and Community Inclusion. And I share this because my training and my experience working in these different sectors really helps me understand the opportunities that exist for systems level change in our systems of support and services, as well as an awareness of the common barriers and challenges that can impede progress. And I'm going to turn it over to Lisa for her introduction.
Thanks, Valerie. Hi, everybody. So yeah, I'm Lisa Maines. I've been at the Child Development Division as the project director for the VIP B5 project since December. Before being in this role, I worked for Family Voices National. I was a project director there. And then before that, worked for Vermont Family Network as a co-director of family support there, and had the pleasure of working with a few people on this call while I was in that role. I also worked at the UVM Center on Disability and Community Inclusion for a while and for a few years, and I enjoyed a brief overlap while Valerie was there. I have two children, now adults, and one of whom has a mysterious genetic qualities that contribute to developmental differences for him. And, you know, though it was a few years ago, we did experience just about every program and service available in early childhood. So, the memories still feel very fresh in many ways. So I'm happy to be back here contributing to this work.
So I know Morgan gave this great overview of the history of writing the grant and the collaborative effort that went into that, but we just wanted to provide this high level overview to refresh everyone's memory about what is VIPB5. And it really is a collaboration between those multiple state agencies that you saw in the prior graphic to strengthen Vermont's early childhood systems. And as was mentioned, the work underway is made possible through the Federal Preschool Development Grant Program, or PDG. So those terms, PDG is the funding mechanism, VIPB5 is the name of the project made possible by the funding mechanism, but largely we use those terms interchangeably. I think historically it's important to note that Vermont had a one-year planning grant in 2019, and our current grant is a renewal grant that will run from 2023 to 2025. We didn't put it on the slide because we can't count on it, but we anticipate a no cost extension for an additional year. Next slide, please.
All right, so the PDG grant has been awarded to a lot of states and territories that you can kind of see on this map. It's a little small, but there are 21 states that have planning grants currently and 21 states that have renewal grants. And just a shout out that it's really great to see such a significant amount of funding being put into the future of young children across the country. So just to give you a visual on the expansion, the expanse of this project, it's quite large.
Great. And so, you know, with that national context in mind, we also wanted to think locally in our state, what is Vermont's vision for the early childhood system? So I pulled this quote directly from the Vermont Early Childhood Action Plan, or the VCAP, as we call it. Vermont aspires to realize the promise of each and every Vermont child by ensuring that the early childhood system is an integrated, continuous, comprehensive, high-quality system of services that is equitable, accessible, and will improve outcomes for children in the prenatal period to age 8 and their families in Vermont. And in preparing this presentation and talking to Lisa about what we wanted to highlight, one of the reasons that we thought it important to, center the vision is because all of the activities underway through this project are in service to this vision. And really, we're looking at how over the course of the 3 years, we are getting closer to fulfilling this vision for Vermont's early childhood system. Next slide, please.
So that's the vision, but then if you think about, how is Vermont working towards this vision? Valerie's going to tell you a little more detail, but we have a total of 19 activities that are underway at some level at this point in this project. The activities are all focused on strengthening the early childhood system, and they really focus on 4 core areas. The first area is program quality improvement, and this is where project activities and collaboration work to improve quality across our mixed delivery system. And we do that by ensuring that we all have a common vision, getting back to that vision that Valerie was just talking about of where we're going. And by increasing the alignment of the vision across all of those different agencies and programs, we can work towards a system that provides equitable and inclusive access to services and resources and supports for all children, especially those that might be in more vulnerable populations. The next core goal would be family and community engagement. And this is where we're really taking a step up towards engaging families and prioritizing what they identify as their needs and what they value, and bringing that all that information and them into the process. Ultimately, we're going to work to ensure that they have access to high quality, and by high quality, that's a phrase that's used a lot, but as an example, we're really talking about culturally responsive, inclusive services and supports that they might need. Another big area, core area, is the workforce development piece, and that's certainly a big one. And it's a widely known fact that there's some gaps in this area. So the project has quite a few activities. And our work's going to focus on really building a robust, well-trained, and well-compensated workforce. That's really what our activities are going to be focused around. Some priority training areas for the workforce will be ensuring that they're culturally responsive and also trauma-informed. And then finally, we're going to look at our system in Vermont of data collection and evaluation. And our efforts here will again work towards that high quality and across sector data that will help everyone be accountable for what they're doing, and also ensure that at the policy level that decisions are being made on a basis that's well informed and has data to back up. And now on the next slide, Valerie is going to talk a little more specifically about the activities in the project that fall under those core areas.
Great, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, so this is a visual that it doesn't showcase every activity that's happening underneath the project, but it's a pretty extensive list of the work that's underway. I'm not going to read through the entire list, but I will provide some select highlights. And one of the first things I want to draw your attention to is, again, just the fact that through the work of this grant, success is really dependent upon the collaboration and strong communication between all the project partners, right? So between Building Bright Futures, Child Development Division, Agency of Education, Department of Health, and Department of Mental Health. And to the extent that the grant is a mechanism that's pulling all of those partners together on a more regular basis to talk about areas of intersection and alignment. One of the things that I'm really excited about is we are starting to build that stronger foundation for our early childhood system. Some of the highlights that I'll just mention here, Lisa mentioned one of those big categories is how are we elevating the voices of families and community members? So we tend to refer to activities by their number. So activity 3.1 is really looking at family engagement, and Building Bright Futures is in the process of creating a family leadership inventory, something that once it's documented will live on beyond the grant. So it's another lens that we're looking at this work through, is how is it sustainable and how are we planning for sustainability right from the outset? So that's a really exciting way that we're looking at family engagement. Data and evaluation efforts. So as the Early Childhood Systems evaluator, I'm providing evaluation, consultation, and technical assistance across all of the 19 activities. And Lisa is also providing support from a project management point of view. And that creates really exciting opportunities to share with some of the implementation teams connections that they're not aware of. We spend a lot of time talking about how the work exists in silos. And so as Lisa and I are able to enter into conversations with each of these discrete teams to really help, disassemble some of those silos and say, hey, let's talk about how the work of early MTSS is really also connected to infant, early childhood, and family mental health, how that work also intersects with special accommodation grants. So helping teams to have a growing awareness of those areas of intersection, whether they're direct connections or sometimes they're more indirect connections, but it's still important for us to have an awareness of them. In terms of interagency collaboration, just also want to note that there are a couple activities that really are more heavily reliant on partnership, particularly between CDD and AOE. And we know that there are multiple levers that are pushing for those two agencies to be in conversation with each other. We know that those conversations, there's still not universal agreement about, for example, what universal pre-K will look like, but the fact that there are multiple avenues by which those conversations are and need to continue to happen is a really important point in our timeline for this work. Next slide, please. All right, Lisa's going to talk about some of our successes and celebration as we look back on year one.
Yeah, thanks, Valerie. Yeah, so we've been actually, Valerie and I and the rest of the team have been feverishly writing our annual performance report. So this is all fresh, and it's a good time to really look back and, you know, get a little bit of an energy boost and celebrate our successes. So as we thought about it, you know, we really wanted to mention that we've achieved additional capacity. And by that, we mean that when the grant was written, way back when it was first written, and I wasn't part of that process, but I admire the fact that it was recognized that there was a need for additional capacity. And as a result of that, the team wrote in some additional staff to be funded by the project. And now at this point, all but one of these positions is filled. So some of the people have been in there longer than others, but we really can feel the increased ability for us to kind of ask the questions that we need to ask and look more closely at what needs to be the next steps that we take. So, so that's really exciting. And the other thing, and Valerie was just talking a little bit about this, but in terms of elevating family and community voice, so she referred to that activity 3.1, which is our supporting family leadership, and of course is led by BBF. I think she mentioned that too. But over the course of year one, they prepared to, you know, gather together some stakeholders and to really begin collecting data and looking at an inventory of what are all the ways that parents are able to access opportunities for leadership and to, you know, put their voice into the picture for how systems level decisions are being made. And so that's really exciting, and it's going to certainly continue and expand in year two in terms of elevating that voice and the voices of communities. And then in terms of the workforce work, we really had an opportunity in year one. We maybe got a little further along in this, you know, everything's on its own timeline. And in year one, we were able to take some real steps towards looking at the pathways that people have to get into the early childhood workforce, you know, to talk about, you know, the gaps and to improve the visibility and the access to those pathways. And one of those pathways is our state apprenticeship program. And that's part of our activity that we refer to as 4.1. That's really looking at the barriers to recruitment in the workforce. So in year one, we released an RFP and we were seeking a vendor to evaluate this state apprenticeship program. And we know that it's considerably underutilized. And what we'd really like to know is why and how can we change that so that, you know, this is a path that people can find easily and can access easily to get into the workforce. So after reviewing the proposals we were able to select and contract with Bank Street College of Education, who will be doing the evaluation of the apprenticeship program. And we've met with them twice, and we're currently finalizing the timeline for their work. So really exciting. They've been really great, and I think that's going to be exciting to see the results of their evaluation. And then looking at alignment across efforts. So the team of cross-agency project leads have been meeting monthly to share various pieces of news about their work in the different project activities, but also importantly, to build our teamwork, you know, to really get to know each other and to get to know, you know, who we are and what we're doing in our working world and how things overlap. And as we've developed those connections, we've really been we've seen examples of people reaching out to each other about various project activities when they're finding those overlaps. As an example, Activity 6.1, which is led by BBF, is a project that's distributing grant funds to the early childhood community to do various kinds of important work that aligns with the project goals and the goals also of the VCAP, the state plan. And one project was awarded to provide additional professional development opportunities specific to early MTSS, which is multi-tiered systems and supports. And the AOE and CDD staff lead that activity. And, we were able to, identify that one of those projects that received that funding was focused on that, and to connect them to another activity under this project, which is focused on early MTSS. So, they were able to provide some additional support for the project coaches on that project. So that was kind of a neat connection that really might well have not happened. And then systems level indicators. So this team of cross-agency leads spent one meeting engaging in a collaboration exercise that was led by Valerie. And Valerie may have more to add on this afterwards. But the activity gave us what is new. It gave us systems level data on this interagency collaboration, the process and where people stand, and what the experiences have been. And we've never had that kind of data before. So it's really exciting to have that now. And then, a few years down the road in the project, we'll be able to do that again and kind of be able to identify the progress that we've made over the course of this grant. So that's very exciting too. Valerie, did you have anything to add about that?
I'll just share that that data is currently being analyzed, and results will be shared back out to that group as part of closing that circle in terms of data stewardship and informing them when we look at the big picture. Here's what the results are, and would be happy to talk more about what we learn at a future SAC meeting as well.
Great.
All right, next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about challenges. Lisa gave us some of the highlights. And again, these are just select pieces of information that we wanted to bring to your attention as the SAC. In terms of year one challenges, we all know that when you implement any project, you always encounter unknowns, bumps in the roads, barriers, challenges. So it's less about the fact that we encounter challenges. It's more about understanding what those challenges are and applying a continuous quality improvement framework to say, what are the lessons learned from these challenges? How could we make an effort not to repeat any of these same mistakes, and even hesitate to call them mistakes, but again, lessons learned in year one. So one of the things that happened, which is fairly common in terms of federal grants of the size, is there were some administrative delays. That took a couple different specific forms. For example, just to process the grant itself and getting the funding flowing out to partners, there were some delays in that, which then led to delays in getting the new PDG funded positions posted and those positions hired into. But again, the successes, we have filled those, all but one of those positions at this time. But, it's important to think about what are some ways in which some of those administrative processes could be streamlined for the future. We also want to acknowledge, as Lisa mentioned, there's been changes in leadership across the different partners and at different levels within those organizations. So many of the people that currently occupy leadership positions were not in those positions when the grant was written. And so it's important just to acknowledge that, that means as good stewards of the project and the vision for the goals of the project, it's important to pause and just orient new leaders to this is the scope of the work as it was written. This is how it serves that vision of the early childhood system, and making sure that we're all, we all have the same playbook that we're operating from in terms of the work and how it moves forward. And related to that is the concept of interagency collaboration buy-in. So as part of that change in leadership, also checking in to say, do we all share the same vision for Vermont's early childhood system? And Lisa mentioned that collaboration exercise. And one of the important pieces that came out of that exercise was a recognition that while there is agreement largely across the board that we want to be moving towards a more collaborative early childhood system, there are some differences in the vision when you look at specifically what do we mean by that, and how do we take that vision and translate it into actual concrete steps. And so that's part of the information I'm taking back to the PGD directors team to say, here's where we see agreement and alignment, and here's areas where we don't necessarily have agreement, and what does that mean? Recognizing that those tensions exist is important because it helps us understand where and how they manifest in the different conversations that we're having about collaboration across the early childhood systems. And then lastly, I'm really passionate about systems level change. And so, but even I have to remind myself, systems level change is slow. This is really like the go slow to go fast approach. And it may be hard to quote, see progress or quote, feel like our efforts are making a difference. But one thing I like to remind all the project partners is, as Morgan said at the beginning, the goal of this grant is really to help create a stronger foundation for all of the work that's happening across sectors of the early childhood system, and acknowledging that many of these activities predated the grant, and the work will continue after the grant. So for me, the important question is, how are we leveraging this infusion of funding and capacity to create a more integrated approach to supporting Vermont's young children and their families? I think we all recognize the work doesn't stop in 2 or 3 years. We are really looking at how are we building an ongoing process and system of monitoring and evaluation. So those were our reflections on year 1 challenges. Next slide, please. So that concludes the formal part of our presentation today. On behalf of Lisa and I just want to thank you for your time and attention and inviting us here. And I'm going to pass it back to the facilitators and see if we have any time for questions or reflections. Thanks.
Thank you, Valerie. We have 2 minutes. 2 minutes for any high-level questions, and then if we have time at the end of the meeting, I can open it back up. Any State Advisory Council members, questions, comments, excitement? Go ahead, Janet.
Sure. I just want to say thank you to Lisa and Valerie for their leadership on this project. And I think one of my my observations, right, is like there's nothing like shared work to actually help facilitate collaboration, right, and relationship building. Is actually, doing good work together is what's going to move us forward. So it's been exciting to be able to have this project building during at least my initial year within Child Development Division, because it's really provided a great vehicle for us to begin to have to connect cross-functionally and to feel like, again, we had some resources to move these projects forward in a moment, because I know a lot of times when we talk about collaboration as a goal, it's like, well, yes, but how? And it's like, well, actually, we've got people and we got some money, so we can actually make some progress in ways that would be against our shared aspirations in a way that would be tough without it. So it's been valuable for that in that way as well so far, and several more years of good things to come.
Awesome. Thanks, Janet. And thank you, Valerie and Lisa. It was an awesome presentation, and we will keep sharing successes and some of the work that's happening over the course of the year. So this won't be the only time that you're hearing about the VIP B5 project. Given our timing, I am going to move us and I'm going to transition into SAC membership and roles of council members. We do have a range of people who are leaving our board today, and we've invited them here to just share some reflections about their time on the board. So I'm going to turn it over to Flor as we start this section.
Thank you, Morgan. So the State Advisory Council is a 23-member governor-appointed council made up of public and private members. Today, we will recognize the contributions of outgoing members, followed by votes to elect the executive committee officers at 5 at-large members. So with that, I want to speak a little bit about Mike, who I just saw join us today. Mike, you can wave so they know where you are. He's here with us, and I was asked to speak a few words about Mike, and I was wondering, how do I do a few words about somebody that I admire so much? So what I'm going to say is that Mike at his core exemplifies the best role model that we all want for our children and for our grown-ups too. He is honest, curious. He has the ability to hold space for all. And when Mike is in the room, whether it's virtually or in person, you know that good work will happen. He is dedicated to all children in Vermont, a servant leader, an equity champion. His commitment to public education and to all the children and families in Vermont is unmatched. And lastly, I would say that we want to thank him for his many contributions to the State Advisory Council. Thank you, Mike.
Well, thank you so much, Flora. That is so nice of you. And I am so grateful for those kind words and for our time together with the whole advisory council. So thanks so much. I'm quite confident we will have work together going forward in one shape or another. It's a small state.
Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you, Flor, for the kind words. It's been an awesome couple of years, and I'm really excited about the partnership. Not just with Mike, but as we think about the next couple of years in the early childhood education space and the partnerships and the kind of energy that you've been able to bring. So thanks, Mike. I would like to ask Dora if you're in a position to be able to talk about one of our phenomenal parent leaders, Lexi Duquette.
Thanks so much, Morgan. I am sorry that Lexi is not here, but want to share some of the ways that she was able to sort of impact the board and was able to contribute her experience and expertise as a family representative. She joined BBF as a parent ambassador in 2020 and joined the SAC as a parent representative in 2021. And she really brought her lived experience to the SAC very clearly, especially around, when there were discussions of recommendations related to mental health and building resilient communities. She talked about her experience in parenting during the pandemic and her experience her experience as a parent in a Head Start program, and also her experience as a parent in a school-based UPK program when we were talking about the forthcoming potential changes coming to universal pre-K. So I really admire the way that she was able to share her experience in and advocate for the well-being of children from her experience as that family representative. So I am sure that we again will be working with her moving forward, and I'm very grateful for her time serving on the board.
Thanks, Dora. Lexi was such a phenomenal advocate and champion. And one of the things that I absolutely loved is that she helped make it real by also having her kids show up in this space with us. And I know that that's not solely, Lexi is not the only one that sits in that space. I think that We've really created a space where the board remembers at all times that we're talking about the importance of kids and families, and that we are all in that together. And sometimes you see Amelie come in and throw things over my head, but Lexi helped us make it a very real experience and helped us understand what is truly important on behalf of kids and families. And we're so, so proud to have had her in this space, and to have her be leading and showing how important it is to provide family leadership opportunities and hear the voice of those most impacted. So thank you, Lexi. All right, Anna, if you are in a position to talk about Paul.
Sure, thanks, Morgan. We are also bummed to not have Paul on his last SAC meeting as a council member, but just want to reflect on his time with the board. I think as many folks on the call know, Paul is just a really excellent cross-sector collaborator. He was always encouraging our team to bring unrepresented voices into the conversation. And to really broaden how we as a board think about economic security and economic policies for families and their children. In that vein, Paul and his team really supported us in the past couple of years with strengthening our policy recommendations in the kind of housing policy space. And again, kind of thinking about how those policies related to how affordable and secure and safe housing really intersect so well with all of the priorities we in this space serving children and their families care about. He also made really an incredible contribution to our State of Vermont Children briefing last year when we held a panel related to housing and really kind of changed how we think about telling stories in that space. And elevating both policy recommendations and the most up-to-date high-quality data on an issue such as housing. So really just want to thank Paul and his colleagues at CBOEO for the ways in which they've strengthened our work as a board and will continue to do so going forward as we think about economic security and families and young kids.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you, Paul. I think, for those of you who are here listening and those of you who are on the board or, are considering thinking about board seats, I think we've had such phenomenal contributions from every single person based on their unique role, their unique strengths. And it's really helped us think critically about what's important on behalf of kids and families, and having such a diverse representation of partners from their context. So really value the folks who have spent so much time with us, really grappling with the hardest challenges on behalf of kids and families. So thank you all. And we're excited to nominate a new slate of members. So I'm going to turn it over to Elisa Stolberg, the co-chair of our board, to talk about some of the new partners that we are onboarding or extending seats on behalf of.
Thanks, Morgan. And thanks for the acknowledgement that sometimes kids come flying in, because I have a sick kiddo home. So hopefully that won't happen, but just in case it does. So at this time, we'd like to present the nominations for the BBF Executive Committee. So the Executive Committee serves as the leadership team advising the BBF Executive Director and Deputy Director, Nonprofit Governance and Strategic Guidance for the State Advisory Council. The Executive Committee has 6 seats, and at this time, the SAC is presented with the following nominations on behalf of the Executive Director. The first is the nomination of Janet McLaughlin to serve a 2-year term on the committee ending March 31st, 2026. That feels so strange to say. Nomination for Christy Swenson to serve as secretary. Continuation for myself, Elisa Stolberg, as public co-chair, Flor Diaz-Smith as private co-chair, Becca Webb as treasurer, and Renee Kelly as ex officio. Okay, so now I'm going to ask for a nomination to the BBF State Advisory Council of the State Advisory Council. The recommendation of the Executive Committee moves to elect the following slate of officers to the Executive Committee. That was a lot. So I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move this slate.
Thank you, Dimitri. A second.
I'll second. It's Carol.
Thanks, Carol. Any discussion?
Should those who might be up for election abstain from voting?
Oh, that seems like a very good idea, and a thumbs up from Morgan.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other discussion? I'm gonna need your help because I can't see everyone, Morgan, so let me know, or Floor, or someone. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Anyone opposed? I don't see anyone. Anyone abstaining, including those who are up for this? Christy, Janet. Okay, I think the motion has passed. Would you agree? For those of you who have seen the hands up.
So this is Morgan. Here's the only other thing I would offer. For those of you who abstain because you are named on the executive committee slate, can you please, outside of your own vote, raise your hand if you are in favor of moving forward with the rest of the slate? Beautiful. Thank you. Motion passes. Congratulations to our new executive board.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, now just to make things more complicated, we're now going to vote on the slate of candidates for the at-large State Advisory Council membership. The voting language is as follows. The BBF State Advisory Council, at the recommendation of the Executive Committee, moves to elect the following at-large members to the Advisory Council. Okay, here we go. Daniel Lindley Mitchell from Washington County Mental Health, serving 1-year term, which ends February 2025. Dr. Deborah Hartswick, who's a retired pediatrician, 3-year term ending February 2027. Amber Houston, parent rep, 3-year term ending February 2027. Erica McLaughlin from the Vermont Principal Association, also a 3-year term ending February 2027. Kiona Baez-Heath from the Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, 3-year term ending February 2027. Becca Webb, Regional Act 166 Coordinator, for a reappointment for a second 3-year term ending February 2027. Eddie Gale from the A.D. Henderson Foundation, reappointment for a second 3-year term ending February 2027. Okay, at this point, we're looking for a motion to approve this slate.
I move. It's Janet.
Thanks, Janet. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dimitri. Any discussion?
And on this vote, we can vote affirmatively and somehow abstain on our own vote?
Yes, says Morgan.
Thanks.
Thanks, Eddie. Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand or say aye, and you can vote for everybody except for yourself. Seeing a lot of hand raising. Awesome. Anyone opposed? Laura, I'm going to assume your hand is not still up for opposition, that you're taking minutes. Okay. Any abstentions? Knowing that everybody is abstaining from voting for themselves. Excellent. Okay. The motion has passed. Welcome, everyone. We're really excited to have you. And I think I'm passing it back off to Morgan, if I'm correct.
Yes, and much appreciating our public and private co-chairs for rolling with the facilitation for today's meeting. I know it's quite the facilitator's agenda, but we do want to spend just a little bit of time talking with folks about the new board and the Early Childhood State Advisory Council as a whole. So what you're seeing on the board right now was the new slate of State Advisory Council members that is effective on, I was going to say July, but no, it is April 1st. And we're really excited to have such a strong wealth of content, knowledge, and expertise and championing of kids and families from so many different sectors. So a couple of things that I would draw your attention to as you're looking at this full board. One of the things that's so important about this public-private partnership is having so many different voices across state government for the folks who are in agencies, departments, and divisions supporting children and families. It's also having such a wealth of knowledge and skill and capacity and expertise in the at-large membership, and really looking at all of the different sectors that are working to support kids and families. And we recognize that every single year we can't have every single sector represented, but we really try to have a diverse board in a range of different ways. And I think that one of the things that supports the strength of this board is that we have the ability to hold the vision. And you heard Lisa and Valerie talk about the vision for Vermont's early childhood system. That is the primary responsibility of this board, to say we understand, we have shared vision, we know we are moving in the same direction on behalf of kids and families, and to shepherd and support that work. And across your sector, figure out how you connect to that work, how we move that body forward, how we think about the impact we're making, and continuously endorse recommendations and have hard conversations on behalf of kids and families from this public-private partnership. So I think that this board has such a strong makeup of the right people, and that our responsibility is to engage people that are not in those voting seats, and to make sure that, as decisions are made, as we're endorsing a slate of recommendations, as we're navigating really challenging topics on behalf of kids and families, that we are bringing the right people and hearing from those most impacted into these spaces, that we are then conveying and going back out into our different communities and organizations to say, okay, how do we connect to this? What does this mean? How do we move this forward? And what does that look like? So as we look at the public partners on the left-hand side, there's so much work that happens, not just in the State Advisory Council space, but also through what we call the interagency coordinating team. In other states, they call that the Children's Cabinet. It's, again, all of the public partners who hold a seat on the board, who come together on a monthly basis to say, okay, how are we coordinating and tackling these challenges on behalf of the system? Where are there opportunities to move forward and collaborate and integrate these pieces? And I think that's also true in our at-large members, that we traditionally call them our private partners. But again, the terminology there is more that these are partners across our state that are committed to supporting children prenatal to age 8, and they hold discrete roles, and they're also coming together to coordinate. And this entire group has the ability to hold everybody accountable to the vision that we've articulated for the system, right? So because we have such a robust network of partners and this quasi-governmental public-private partnership, we have the ability to say, here are the diverse needs of kids and families across the state. Here's where those challenges and the solutions are aligned with the strategic plan. And here's the path for the next couple of years. Because the broader mission of the organization is to improve the well-being of children and families, and to use evidence and data to inform decision-making and policy, but also to bring together voices across all different sectors and within regions to discuss the critical challenges that we have and to problem solve, right? It's a space of saying, we understand the challenges, how do we move that forward? And again, I really appreciate Valerie and Lisa talking about that vision, right? We have set a united vision. We were strategically created as a quasi-governmental entity so that there is no one entity that is holding within state government that vision on behalf of so many collective partners, right? It's about thinking collectively as a whole about equitable access, improving outcomes, and being able to hold sometimes the legislature, sometimes the administration, and sometimes our community partners accountable to how we're moving towards that vision. Next slide, please. Especially for those of you who are new to the Building Bright Future State Advisory Council network, I think the other piece that's important for the board to know is that you are supported by such a massive network of partners that come together across the state of Vermont. Over 500 individuals representing so many different entities and serving so many different kids to say, what do we know across 12 regional councils in the state of Vermont? What are the needs? How are we trying to problem solve? Where are we stuck? And how do we actually elevate that to our strategic plan committees and our state advisory council? Are there things that we can't solve locally that actually need a statewide solution? So we are bringing together experts across all of those regions that help inform our ability to create change at the highest levels in state government. We also have 7 strategic plan committees that are supporting this work. Again, public and private partners coming together on a monthly basis to say, okay, we understand the emerging challenges and priorities. We understand some of the longstanding issues. And what is the next step in this path? What are the things that we need to elevate to our state agency leaders or to the governor's office on behalf of kids and families? And then this state advisory council body, you are that broad scale primary advisor to the governor and the legislature. And then you have our state agency leaders, that is that interagency coordinating team. And their responsibility is to take all of that work, those needs, the challenges, the opportunities, emerging priorities, back up and say, okay, how do we create positive change? What are the things that we have control over to be able to create more seamless navigation of services for kids and families? And how do we think about this? So all of this network and all of our work together is really supposed to hold kids and families at the center. How are we improving well-being? How are we not letting the discussions of the funding, even though, those are important conversations, how do we bring it back to how we're supporting the well-being of kids and families and communities? And how do we continuously use evidence and data to inform our decisions about how to move forward? How do we elevate the voices of families and communities in the right ways? And all of that network is there in that advisory way. And, yes, we have some levers that we can pull through our state advisory council recommendations, but it's also the discussions that we're hosting at this table that are used in a way of advisement. It's also one-on-one meetings. It's testimony to the legislature. So really wanting folks to think critically about how to be engaged in the network, how whatever seat you hold within this network, whether it's on the state advisory council, in a strategic plan committee, in a regional council, how are we using this network as a way to advise and make sure that we are collectively moving forward with our path to improve the well-being of kids and families. We can end the screen share now as we transition into the next section of our meeting. But I think the reminder that I have as we are coming into a new slate of state advisory council representatives is the importance of relationship building and how relationships and trust are harder to build in a virtual space. We are still working really hard to determine when and how we should be together in person. But just really wanting our board and the State Advisory Council network as a whole to realize and remember that I'm looking at you virtually, Renee Kelly, and this collective impact quote that change moves at the speed of trust. And we truly believe that those relationships and the partnerships that we're building are what is going to support change for kids and families. So let's talk a little bit about how the State Advisory Council and our entire network can create change, where we've seen some of that over the course of the last year, and to talk more about what you want to be discussing as a board. Like, what are the issues that the council should be discussing as we come into this next year and as we navigate the rest of this legislative session? We're going to break into pairs to do some of that work. And if folks have any questions, you can put those into the chat as well. But when we break into the pairs, we're going to ask you to respond largely to two different prompts. The first is, what are the levers that the State Advisory Council can use to create change, and where have you seen it in the last year? But even more importantly, what are the most critical topics and issues that you want to see our council discuss in the coming year? And we'll share a link in the chat to our Jamboard. And then when we come back, we are going to ask a couple of members of our State Advisory Council to share some of their reflections. So we're going to pause our recording and transition into some pairs. Caught off because I know my group got cut off and we probably could have talked a lot longer in that space. So I do want to open the floor. I know you all can see the Jamboards, but to our State Advisory Council leaders first, what are some of the levers that you all saw? And if you want to prioritize the question, what issues did folks say they want to see the council address? Like, what are those issues or things that we should be talking about as a full board as we enter the next year? And feel free to keep adding to the Jamboards, but we'll start with the State Advisory Council and then open it a little bit broader.
I can share a couple from our group discussion. So we talked about some of the issues that we'd want to see discussed in the coming year. And there were a lot, probably no surprises though. One was just monitoring Act 76. And then specifically, we were all really interested in the updates on the pre-kindergarten evaluation and seeing just what's the methodology going to look like and how will that be implemented, and all the different angles that could be examined there. We also talked about the importance of looking at recruitment into the workforce and issues related to wages and compensation. We talked about embedded mental health services. So what support are providers getting to be able to work with families and take sort of a holistic view. We talked about some of the value of specific partnerships within the SAC. So like the Office of Racial Equity and just having that relationship and bringing in different perspectives and the areas of expertise that we all have to share across the state. And then I don't know if anyone else in my group wants to chime in on some of the levers of change that we discussed.
Janet, I saw you on mute.
I think I never muted myself coming back into the big group. But Carol and I talked specifically about the value of the data work that BBF does in terms of its and the fact that it's sort of put into context and help interpret the available data, and then we also talked a little bit about sort of the delivery systems for early childhood work and whether or not there was any sort of conversation to be had there around, state level versus regional versus local, when it's community agencies versus government entities, sort of the pros, the cons, the decision points, and if they're, because it's really different, whether or not but there's key themes to be looked at potentially when you're thinking about, mental health services versus pre-kindergarten education versus, any other of the supports and services for families with young children.
Awesome. Thank you both. So one of the things that we'll do over the next month as we are planning out our State Advisory Council meetings for the next year will be to review both the levers, but also, what are those things and how do we as a board prioritize those discussions? Because I think there's so much opportunity for us to, again, build a really brave space as a state advisory council and maximize the participation of our members, but also really think critically about how we can create change across the different systems and what types of conversations we need to have to be able to move the needle. So really excited about that opportunity. We want to take the last 8 minutes of today's meeting to have a more open forum. So again, want to invite members of the public to be able to bring any of the topics or either longstanding or issue priorities that are coming up right now to our State Advisory Council and really think about again, what do we as a board need to be thinking about? What issues do you want us to be thinking through and discussing at this kind of statewide level? And how do we think about building a culture of engagement and making sure that we are hearing from partners at all times? So as we think about this next section, again, this is not necessarily board discussion, so we won't be having responses during this period, but really opening the floor for the public to be able to share and let the SAC know what you care about right now in this moment. Any members of the public who would like to offer your thoughts and reflections? All right, not seeing any. I do want to offer a little bit more time for our State Advisory Council to raise any emerging issues or priorities that you are monitoring that are impacting kids and families right now. Any big picture things that you want to make sure that the rest of the board is paying attention to as we just went through crossover, as you're thinking about things that are emerging in your sector in this moment.
Morgan, can I add a comment? We didn't discuss this explicitly, but I see a lot of comments on the Jamboard about data, and we did talk a bit about that. I sort of alluded to this in our discussion, but a lot of the data is long-term metrics. Outcome metrics are going to be long-term, especially regarding Act 46. It's really helpful for the business community to also hear about short-term metrics where it's possible. Cycles are short a lot of the time in business decision making. So I would just put a shout out there for any even anecdotal metrics that we could share. Immediate outcomes have a lot of impact on my audience.
Great feedback, Dimitri, and it's something that we've been talking a lot about and thinking about the importance of qualitative data on behalf of the system, that it's not always a number, right? And that some of the change that we would expect to see really quickly may not be that we are changing these long-term developmental outcomes on behalf of kids, that we actually would expect to see changes in the experience of those most impacted, right? Change and experience of providers, of the business community, of educators, and trying to capture those as well. So I think that that's something we are really prioritizing and trying to figure out all of the different ways where we can capture and be able to tell that story in a really meaningful way. Great feedback. Others, anything that's coming up for you as you're reviewing the Jamboard or things that you want to elevate to the full board? Go ahead, Janet.
Just if there's a space, I just want to make sure folks know that the first expansion in eligibility for the Child Care Financial Assistance Program is coming up. So that will be on April 7th. It's a Sunday. It aligns with the first service period for Child Care Financial Assistance after April 1st. So that will be the expansion of eligibility from 350% of the federal poverty level up to 400%. We're also updating all of the income guidelines for the federal poverty level, 2024 federal poverty level. So over the weekend, for current families, we ran a mass benefits redetermination process. The team's doing the final corrections and cleanup that happens after that, since we've got thousands and thousands of certificates. So families and childcare providers have that information, that are currently participating have that information in advance of April 7th as the effective date. And then new families will be welcome to apply after April 7th against the updated income guidelines. So we're CDD News, like we're sending it out that way. We've got a front porch forum. We have some flyers and things like that that are still in, we're still finishing them up right now. But we don't want people, if people want to be applying against the new income guidelines, that can't happen until April 7th, just based on our technology. So we're going to go hard starting on April 8th, but not really before then. But you guys can know that it's coming.
Thank you, Janet. Huge, huge changes. And, you know, I think one of the things for the board to be thinking about is how are we all supporting the messaging of the different entities that are coming to our table, and how are we making sure that we are providing as much of that communication and consistent communication to families and to educators and to others about significant policy changes, so that we can really see the impact that we are intending to make. So Janet, keep us posted, and we're happy to disseminate as well. Any others as we close today's meeting? All right. Well, on behalf of the State Advisory Council, thank you for those who are able to be here today. Thank you to our outgoing board members. Please stick around and don't be strangers. We'd love to continue to partner, and we know that your teams are really instrumental in this work. So really seeing you as ambassadors of the Building Bright Futures Network, and really helping us engage the right people, so that we can inform decision-making at all of the right levels. So thank you for being here today. Congratulations to our new board members, and we will see you next month. Have a great day, all.